Hello, folks. Welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And this is This Week in History. As you know, at the show, what we do is we pick a thing that happened on this week in history, and we talk about it.
Yep.
And Will has 1 hour
Just
to explain to me what this thing is.
Correct.
There we go. This week we're discussing the founding of Dublin.
Founding of Dublin.
Dublin, Ireland.
Ireland. The Emerald Isle.
In 988, July 10th.
July 10th, 988. That's right.
So here we go. This week in history, the founding of Ireland. Ready, Will?
Yes, sir. All right. So today we're going to talk about Dublin. So today, Dublin is also known as Béal Atha Cliath, which Béal Atha Cliath is the town of the hurdled ford. So it's like run, jump over this.
How big's a ford?
The ford is like a shallow bit of water where you can cross a river.
Bigger than a pond?
Well, a ford's part of a river.
Part of a river.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking fjord.
Fjord is it's very different. But we're going to be tied into fjords a little bit because there are people of the fjords involved in the founding of Dublin.
Okay.
Dublin itself actually means black pool. And originally there were two settlements. There was Dublin, which is Dublin, and that's Blackpool. And then just down the river a little bit, the River Liffey, which is what Dublin is on. Dublin is on the east coast of Ireland, next to the River Liffey, Liffey. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing it properly because I think they Anglicanized everything.
Sure.
But
we'll do our best.
But yeah, so Blackpool is a region next to the river where like the water kind of pools off and makes like a lake, like a little lake.
Okay.
And that's Blackpool. And then down the ways a little bit is Atha Cliath, which means the hurdled ford. And it was probably like somebody was like, oh, you can just like jump across the river pretty easily here.
Yeah. Sure.
And they built a town there.
Nice.
But it's gotten so big. So nowadays, Dublin, which is the capital of Ireland, the city itself, just Dublin, covers 45.5 square miles and has a population of 554,554, which I thought was kind of funny. But the region itself has an area of 123 square miles and 2.1 million people. So that's where it's at today. It's massive.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go all the way back to when it was founded.
Okay.
So before Ireland was Ireland, it was a series of kingdoms, small kingdoms, mostly fought over by petty kings.
I'm going to put a map right here of Ireland. This is a little island off of England.
Off of England. Next door to England, right across there's a channel of water there, which I should probably know what they call it, but I think it's a different name in Ireland than it is in Wales. But it's right next to Wales. And also, like the lower bottom westernmost piece of England, because Wales is like this chunk, and then England kind of wraps around it, and they're like, we can't go here. Wales is like famously unconquerable.
No.
But they eventually did, but it took forever, because the Welsh were like, no, go away. Plus, Wales is a very treacherous terrain.
I was say it was
basically anything that's not a mountain is a marsh.
Oh, okay, nice.
Welcome
to Wales.
It's also like, what's the point of conquering it? There's like 5 people there. They're happy.
Okay.
But it's also one of the few places in the world that still speaks traditional Breton.
Oh.
The traditional, they're considered like the purest English.
And that's why no one can understand
That's
them.
why nobody can understand. That's why you have Lufwen, Lelele, and or whatever it's pronounced. But it's the longest town name in the world. It's like 37 letters.
Oh, okay.
And it's Welsh, and I don't know how it's pronounced, but the end of it is Lufwen,
They're explaining it while falling down stairs.
It's a rough one.
Did you want me to write all that down, sir?
They're like,
just call the ambulance.
Yeah, can you spell that? Well, it's L. I'm Gutshot. Can we just say it's that one? They just carry a screenshot of the town there. But we're not there. We're across the sea. Right. And I'll send you a picture, too. Well, we have a picture of this is what Ireland actually looked like, split into kingdoms.
Ooh.
Yeah. At the time of 900 AD, thereabouts. So originally, at this area, there's not a huge amount of settling. For some reason, people just didn't live there. It's actually a pretty prime spot. But it's not like the center of power. It's not a big area. There's thought to have been an ecclesiastical settlement, so like a monastery, but a little one, not anything big. And the center of like all of Irish culture is a ways away. This isn't factored in here.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly where it is. I probably should have written that down. They have like the hill of Tara, which Tara is like the main. It's a very holy spot. We'll talk about Tara, and
Okay.
I'll tell you when we need to have a picture of it, 'cause it's quite cool.
Okay.
But at this time, there's not really much there. Well, that didn't last long.
Sure.
In 795, the Vikings
The Vikings coming in from
Scandinavia.
Scandinavia.
So there's different types of Vikings. There's the Norse Vikings, so they're from Norway,
Yeah.
and there's the Danish Vikings. The Danes have like the most famous guys, like Ragnar Lodbrok that we've
Okay.
talked about before, and then the Norse have their own people. They're very different cultures. Everybody always just lumps the Vikings in as two.
Yeah.
It's one group. But
I
it's
always
not.
just think of them as Norwegian, but that is my heritage.
Yes. Well, there
So
were
I'm-
a ton of Norwegian Vikings. They were like some of the big starters were Norwegian Vikings. Actually, I think Ragnar might actually be Norwegian. I'm gonna get yelled at by a Dane or a Norwegian.
Do I get yelled at by Norwegian?
I'm fairly certain. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think he's actually Norwegian.
Okay.
Is what they've claimed credit. But I'm sure both sides have. He's semi mythological, so it doesn't count.
Who are these Vikings coming in?
Yes.
Oh.
At the time, these Vikings kind of came from all sorts of areas. There's not a specific group because they're hitting Ireland all over the place, and they're doing like their classical raid structure of run in,
Yeah.
steal stuff, kill people, take slaves, run away.
Yeah.
And they keep doing this, but this is like the first time they start showing up is 795. Now, what the Vikings eventually did was, especially in England, it's really apparent in England because that was like perfect ground for them. They had really rich farmland. There were lots of isolated monasteries to rob.
In
And
England, you're talking
in
about.
England.
All right.
So they start doing this kind of skirting around the edge. It is mostly Norwegians that go to Ireland, though. So that is a good question because the Danes start to settle in Britain or in England, and then the Norwegians are like, well, we don't want to be by you guys. We're going to find something new, and I bet it's nicer here. Ooh. So they sail around to the other side of the islands and find this. Plus, they would run into conflict with each other. And Vikings, like when they go at war with each other, they're mean. Like they don't treat them any differently.
It's like they're fighting Vikings.
Yeah, exactly. So when you have this mindset of this is how we fight,
Yeah.
it's everybody. They'll fight whomever. They'll fight their own people. They don't. This is not a unified thing.
Sure.
And half of the Vikings are doing this as independent mercenaries and adventurers trying to make their own names for themselves. So these guys they're going to fight everybody
Okay.
to achieve wealth, status, fame. Fame is huge with Vikings. You explore, fame. You trade, fame. You kill, fame.
You want to
Your
die
name-
in battle.
You die in battle, and also
Get to Valhalla.
Exactly, kick it Valhalla. You want to go to Valhalla and have a good time drinking endless mead and fighting every single day,
Woo!
and then go back and get drunk and then do it all over again the next day.
Hey, beats living.
Beats living. Just keep on living. By the way, today's coffee is brought to you again by Lock, Stock, and Bagel. They gave us some bread. Well, they didn't give it to us. I bought it.
Someday, though,
But
if we keep
someday-
talking about them, they'll
someday
give us
we're gonna
stuff.
keep talking about our local coffee shops. And I'm going to eat bread just to spite my brother who commented last week, why are you eating? Because it's delicious.
Oh, good.
Today is apple bread. So we have these Vikings that are trying to explore the rest of the world and branch out. Because, I don't know if many people know this, but Norway is mostly cold and not good for farming or
Yeah.
much of anything else.
It's good
It's too cold and it's too rocky to mine it terribly well.
It's good for
because
skiing.
It's great for skiing. It has the fjords, which are good for like little bays, so you can fish from them and you can build ships there. But it's so cold that you're really limited, and you can tell a lot about like older cultures by how well they grow,
Yeah.
by how good their farming is. Because if you don't have food, you can't have big families. If you can't have big families, you can't have a big population. If you don't have a big population, you can't conquer things.
There you go.
That's just how humanity works.
But their
Make enough
climate
babies.
was good for getting out of there.
Yeah, it was perfect for giving them the resources to leave.
That's good.
And leave they did.
Sometimes you should listen to nature.
Sometimes nature just gives you like, you know what you could do there?
You could just leave.
You build a boat and go that way. Get out. Nature's literally telling them to go away. When you make it, that's what nature really should have done, is just made it really hard to live in places. And that's how nature could have preserved itself. But
I mean, I guess
have to have nice warm places.
People are stubborn.
People are stubborn. So the Vikings have moved westward, and they eventually move around England, and they find Ireland. And they think this is ripe for the picking, just like England was, no problem. And the Irish are their own culture. They're totally different than England at this time.
Okay.
They are not related. And
They're not under English rule?
They're not under English rule, but they are divided amongst a bunch of what they call petty kingdoms.
Oh, well.
Rather than...
Who calls them that?
Everybody... it depends on which kingdom you're in, right?
Yes.
If you're in the Aeneal lands, you're not a petty kingdom, but everybody else is a petty kingdom.
Look at all these petty kingdoms.
Look at all these
around
petty
here.
kingdoms. But then if you're in Connacht,
Sir,
you're like...
They call you the same thing, sir.
Yeah, and then in Connacht, they're like, oh, they're all a bunch of petty kingdoms. Look at these petty kings. The only guy who got to say he wasn't in a petty kingdom was the High King.
Ooh.
So Ireland at this time has all of these petty kingdoms, minor kingdoms fighting over control over an island that isn't that huge. Ireland's not massive.
Yeah.
But it's very green, it's very fertile, it has a lot of stuff like that you want. You
So
know,
are they
there's enough
doing like
resources.
full-on war fighting, or are there little skirmishes and stuff?
I mean, it depends on the population, right? Okay. So there's a lot of border skirmishes. That's a good point. You know, it's like a village versus
I can
a
see
village.
that.
It's 50 guys. There's raids.
It just seems like too small of an island to have
massive
big
wars.
war over. Like,
We're talking like 1,000 guys on 1,000 guys kind of warfare, not 20,000 men marched across from Connacht to Ulster.
because you can't take over more than the island.
Yeah, right. There's only so much you can do.
What's it worth? Yeah.
And they don't have the most advanced farming techniques because nobody does. So they don't have these massive populations. Right, so it's all about scale. It's large for them,
sure.
Small for everybody.
Oh
else.
yeah, no, I mean a war in your living room is big. It's
Yeah, if it's your house, yeah.
if you got two guys with broadswords, that's a big deal.
That's a big war. So yeah, their warfare is not as huge, and they have kind of a traditional feudal setup. You know, the king calls down on his loyal retainers. They call down on their loyal retainers, and they call down on their loyal retainers, and a huge amount of it is built around families.
Trickle-down economics.
Trickle-down warfare.
Oh.
Yeah. This guy's mad at this guy, so all of us have to fight.
Oy.
But usually the kings fought. That was like a required... Like, if you were not
they were
brave, if you were not fighting, you're not worth following.
In the thick of it?
Yeah. If you couldn't fight, you didn't get the right to tell
It
people
always
what
struck
to
me odd places that have like a really like weak, feeble, either really young or just like a weak, feeble king, or really old king who doesn't like actively get involved with stuff. Why is he in charge? Yeah, just because he was born into it.
Yeah, later on in history you see that happen a lot more. But as we're in like what they call like the Dark Ages, which is a silly name for it because there was actually a huge amount of growth and change going on in the world that nowadays they don't really call it that anymore.
Do we just not write it down? Is that why it's called the Dark Ages?
It's called the Dark Ages because it was after the fall of Rome, and it's a very it's kind of almost xenophobic, almost racist, like if you weren't Roman you sucked.
Right.
Kind of concept, right? Like if you weren't a Latin-speaking country, then everything else was terrible. But like the rest of the world was doing a lot of stuff, and at the same time,
How you survived the Dark Ages? What are you talking about?
Yeah, they didn't even have candles. Ugh. There is a thought that there was like a mini ice age during that, where it did get colder.
Oh, okay.
But not like 30 degrees cold. It wasn't like, you know, like the Vikings would talk about like the wolf Fenris is outside howling and Ragnarok is starting and all this. It was like 2 degrees cold. It was a little colder.
Chilly. Get a shawl.
But it was largely because Rome fell and there was this power vacuum and people were moving in and out of the former empire and new kingdoms were rising.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like this apocalyptic, awful end of days thing. Actually, in the Middle Ages, there was way worse stuff going on than the Dark Ages. Like there were a lot of battles in the Dark Ages, but again, we're not talking 20,000 people despoiling stuff. You don't get really nasty stuff between the Roman era and like later times till you hit like the Crusades, when they're like, oh yeah, we'll just depopulate this city.
After the Dark Ages, it's the Renaissance, right? Is that the next thing that
It's
comes?
the Dark Ages, and then they call it the Middle Ages, or a medieval era, and then the Renaissance. This would really just be called the early medieval period, is probably the best way to put it, or post-Roman era is a good way to put it. But it's also funny because the post-Roman era, Rome is still a thing. Like Rome is its own kingdom. It's just not the empire anymore.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
owned
they
by
didn't
other
go
people.
anywhere.
And the Byzantine Empire never went anywhere. They're still Roman, and they didn't fall until the 15th century. So the Romans never went away. They just moved.
Maybe it's dark for you on that side. Over here, it's pretty light.
Yeah, the guys in Constantinople are like, I don't know what you're talking about, but we got like 1 million people living here. We have so much trade and so much money that we can just buy our ways around war. It's
No.
pretty awesome. Don't know what you guys are talking about.
good deal.
We've got mosaics coming up everywhere. We have all kinds of art and
We've
stuff.
got math.
We have math. We learned this cool thing from the Arabs. It's called zero.
What?
That's pretty neat.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the Dark Ages for a lot of
Sure.
what they call it, the Dark Ages, and it's really not.
You don't have zero. You just have nothing.
Yeah, it's totally different. We can't do math now. We got what's less than 1? Nothing.
Nothing.
So, it's like 9 plus 1. They don't have.
That's
10.
the whole thing. I
It's
don't.
a
We,
whole-
we don't have to go into this now, but the
concept
the
of-
concept and invention of zero. is a
Zero.
whole-
Yep. And I think that was largely started in like Baghdad,
Sounds right. Yeah.
which is the center of learning.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Anyway, so going back to our Emerald Isle.
Yes.
So Ireland is not. There's no unified front. So when the Vikings see this, they're like, "Oh, it's chaos. This is awesome." Much like how England was not ruled by one king, there were
Right.
several kingdoms. There was Northumbria and there was Wessex. In Ireland, I'm going to try to pronounce some of these. I did do a brief pronunciation guide so I wouldn't get everything wrong. So there's Iníl, which is spelled U-I with a little over the I, space, N-E with a little over it, I-L-L. That's Iníl.
Mm-hmm.
There's northern and southern Iníl.
Sure.
Between northern and southern Iníl, there is Breifne and Argiala. Next to it, there's Ulaid, there's Connacht, there's Munster, there's Leinster. And then there's this one's hard. O-S-R-A-I-G-E. Osraige. I think that's how it's pronounced.
you took the
Osraige.
present.
I didn't study all of them. The trickiest one is the Iníl because they
Yeah.
are a huge power in the region.
Yeah.
For the longest time, the Iníl family basically ran Ireland as the High King. So their system of kingship is...
But I'm sorry, the Munster, is that where the cheese is from?
I believe so.
Makes sense.
Yeah, not to be confused with Herman and
Right.
Lily and
Yes.
Grandpa Munster. Totally different.
Munster.
But their family, you know, their ballad of the land is da 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 da, and then they charge to war because
The kids love Munster's references.
they're making a new one.
Okay.
Rob Zombie's making a movie.
All right. Northern Uníl.
The Iníls. So the Iníls are they basically the concept of the High King. They call it every king is called a Ri, R-I, Ri, and if you're the High King, you're the Ard Ri. So the Ard Ri is like that's top dog, nominally. Each king controls his own land however he sees fit, and then the Ard Ri is kind of given like some money usually. You're supposed to pay him some money.
Uh-huh.
He's called in to handle disputes. He can call up other kingdoms for a large war, but he's not supposed to call up kings against other kingdoms.
You say call up. I mean, they send a messenger.
Guys!
He's
Yeah,
like,
he doesn't. Yeah, no.
Why is this not working? We don't have electricity
stand
yet,
on
sir.
top of it and go, "Hey, fellas, we're going to war over here.
Ireland's smaller than I thought.
Why didn't you come to battle? We couldn't hear you in Connacht. You should have sent a rider." "I did. Oh, never got here. We didn't kill him, we swear.
He fell in the ford.
He fell in the ford, but not the fjord." Very different. So the Ardri's job was to maintain control and balance between the kings,
Yeah.
not necessarily as like an emperor. This is not to be thought of as like what he says goes.
Right.
Divine.
More of an
right.
arbitrator. if
Yeah,
you will.
yeah, much more of like it's almost democratic.
Sure.
You know, the kings got together. Sometimes they would have conflict, but they would also have conversations. And the Irish were big believers in. It's awesome. They wrote a lot, like a lot. Poetry. Every king had his own poet, a bard. The term
poet.
bard, that's Irish.
Okay.
That is a Gaelic thing. And they were the chroniclers. They would write all of this information down. Now, obviously, you get some bias because
Well,
the guy
sure.
who's paying you the most.
Right. I'd like to have a poet
Yep. It was
who
the
makes
king.
me look good.
Yep. The king would have a personal poet follow him around, and they would sing songs. They'd write, and they could be women too.
Sure.
They did not have, and Irish culture actually had some really powerful women So it's thought that maybe they were a little more understanding of women's place in society, wasn't necessarily subservient.
Oh, okay.
They had a lot more independence. They divorced guys. They went off and did their own thing.
They could do their own thing.
They could do their own thing, live their own
Wow.
lives. Now, it shouldn't be considered like egalitarian, like how we have nowadays in a lot of places, and obviously not perfectly. We're working on it. But the concept being that most of the world was like, women suck, stay in your kitchen, make babies. And in Ireland, they're like, no.
Okay.
Like the legend of Queen Maeve and the cattle raid of Cooley,
Yeah.
which we'll do on an episode on at some point, even though it's technically mythology. But that's the Táin, the most famous Irish war story ever, fought over a bull. Literally, this war is bull. I'm not the funny one.
Nailed it.
Mike's the funny one. That's why I'm not supposed to tell jokes. I get one. I get my one bad joke. So the Ard Rí, the High King, is supposed to kind of control, like you said, he's the arbitrator.
Yeah.
And also, if there's like a huge world-ending crisis, he's supposed to be like, guys, let's all pull together.
Here's the deal.
Fight against the thing that's going to destroy Ireland. And they're like, what's Ireland? It's Ireland. Ireland. Yours, mine, ours.
Was it not called Ireland?
It wasn't really called Ireland
Okay.
at the time. I should probably research that. They might have called it Ireland. Because
I guess-
it's the land of Ire. It's the land of Ires.
Yeah.
That's a Celtic term, so probably something similar but different name.
Okay.
'Cause Ireland is obviously the Anglicanized, the English version. Because the English won the language war. I hate to tell everybody, but they did. So everything is
You put in the
Anglicanized.
time, you put in the effort.
Yep.
You
Although,
too can have the most confusing
Ireland
language.
largely has everything split between English and Gaelic also.
Oh.
Like, it's interchangeable. You're supposed to speak both languages. It's
Oh,
really
like
fascinating.
modern day Ireland?
Yeah.
Really?
Ireland, we're going to get into that as we go.
Okay.
So, the Vikings have seen that this is prime raiding territory. All these little kingdoms, they start to learn about the culture, because that's a big thing with the Vikings. As you conquer or as you raid, they capture slaves and they question them. Well, what's this area like?
Oh.
Well, they want to know what's wealthy and ideal raiding territory.
Where
what are
are
good
the-
the farms?
Where are the good pastry shops?
Where are the best places to get snacks?
Yep.
But they want to
Any
find,
good
like,
shows happening tonight?
where can we winter our ships?
Oh yeah.
Where can we do this? And then also they immediately try to figure out the politics of the area so they can pit kings against each other, work as mercenaries sometimes. Like, oh, so Connacht and Ulster are fighting.
How can we make that worse?
Who pays the most?
Yep.
And then they can go and fight. They take spoils, they take slaves, and the next year they might fight for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, for an adventurer type, which they just want to go out, travel, and fight, and that's their thing, it's ideal for them.
Yeah.
This is ideal. Well, now they want to make what's called a long fort, which is, it's just long and then Phort. And that's where they would winter their ships. It's just a little naval encampment. They drag the long ships up onto the land, and they build like a berm around it, and then they winter in the area.
Sure.
Because traveling around England and Ireland in the winter months on the water is
Yeah,
like
that sounds
suicide.
awful. Yeah.
It's horrible. It's really choppy. The winds are crazy. Like, you don't have the hurricanes like in, like the Gulf Coast or anything, but it's rough.
Winter's not a good time to sail.
Yeah,
in general.
it's colder.
Yeah.
You just die. Like, you just die. It's
Okay.
just not. Even the Norse are like, this is stupid, and we are used to cold, and this is dumb. 'Cause it's wet and cold.
Let's bury our ships for a couple months.
Exactly. And long ships were made light enough they could portage them. You literally just pick up the ship as long as the whole crew's there, and you just march it along.
Yeah.
They're made to travel like that. They could travel upstream. They could travel in very shallow waters, which is why England and Ireland were great, because they're just covered in rivers. So you'd be like, we're safe, we're inland. Is that a ship?
Oh man.
Seamus, is that a ship over there? Oh, yeah, it looks like a ship. And
They
then,
can't get through that shallow water. Oh no, they are.
oh no.
Oh, we're on land. Oh, they're picking up the ship.
Nope. There's that's the hurdle ford.
Oh,
You can jump over it.
They're jumping.
There's no way they can take a ship. Oh my God! They sailed right past it. Is that 100 men in that boat? Sure looks like it. Do they all have axes and shields and chainmail? Well, we're in trouble, aren't we?
Wow.
Best call the king.
Hello.
Yeah. No.
Still no phones.
They cut the lines.
Oh no.
The lines down. They cut the telegraph wire. I don't know. The telegraph is just a series of guys shouting. So anyway, so this is ideal land, and the Vikings eventually set up a long fort, a more permanent settlement along the coast, and this area along the Liffey River by Blackpool is great because you could bring the ships into the pool. You could fish there. It wasn't so bad. The winters aren't super harsh in Ireland, and they camped out next.
So they're there. But they didn't like take over a city.
Nope.
They're just like
they're just building.
So the people who lived nearby were like, I guess these guys are staying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the guys in Athacliath, the ford, the hurdled ford, which is the reason why Dublin today is called Athacliath, but also called Dublin is. It is expanded to cover this whole area of both these villages. So they might be like down the river, but I mean, we're talking at times when townships were like a mile apart.
Yeah.
It's literally, an extended farm or a few fishermen live together, and it grows from that. And then down there was a good fishing spot or a good farm spot, and that grew.
Yeah.
So it might take you you still got to walk.
Sure, yeah.
And that's a different town. Nowadays, especially for us in America, it's difficult to understand the concept of this because most of our towns, we're very spread out now because we have such a huge swath of land.
Yeah.
But in England, especially or in Ireland, the communities are much closer.
Yeah.
And as the population grows, they just kind of absorb each other. So there's like the Dublin area is actually like 10 towns. Much like, it's a great example is Green Bay.
Okay.
Green Bay is a town. It started out as a fort. Fort Howard, expanded from there, Green Bay. It's the whole thing. But then we have like Bellevue and Ledgeview and De Pere and Howard, and it's all just like one area.
Yeah.
And the town, of Green Bay is 100,000 people, but the area around it is like 250,000 if you mix it all together.
The greater Green Bay area.
The greater Green Bay area. So there's the greater Dublin area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the early days of that. So it's interesting because there's kind of disagreement over whether Dublin was founded in this spot or that spot where they specifically parked their ships because they did a lot of like earth ramparts and woodwork, and that stuff tends to break down.
Oh.
And the area's covered in like dig sites and areas where they're trying to figure out where everybody is. But it's been settled and resettled so many times, it's kind of difficult to pinpoint it.
Yeah.
And then you also have two groups of people that keep sagas and annals, which are the Vikings keep sagas, which is all spoken word, and the Irish keep annals, which is largely spoken word, but then was eventually transcribed and written down, just like the Vikings. They have almost identical poetic tradition, where they take like an historical person, a guy, a contemporary, and they kind of lionize that person, make him more famous, make him more godlike, make him more powerful, able to do these great feats. And then we in the modern day are going, okay, so that guy is in their story is this guy historically.
Oh, okay.
And that guy in their story is this guy historically.
Yeah.
And it's hard to figure out exactly who was who. And then you're trying to mix the guys from the Viking sagas with the Irish annals and figure out, oh, this guy is this guy.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to like the way they've layered it out. So a lot of these guys we're going to get to are going to have two names. There's the Irish name, and then there's going to be the Viking name.
Okay.
And then there's also the English name,
Cool.
who matter the least in this because they're not there. This is all Irish
Which
people.
is the
and
one
Norse.
we use now?
This is usually the English name. Oh, actually, it was weird because you'd click. I'm looking through all these things, and then I'm doing this research here in this book, and it's got a different name, and this book's got this, and then Wikipedia is like this, and the lovely thing about Wikipedia is everything's linked.
Yeah.
So you click on this name, and the other name that you go to is totally different, and then you read, oh, this guy has 6 names.
Oh, well, that's why.
And that's just his Irish names.
Oh, no.
Then here's all his Norse names. Well, Norse is 7 different languages, too, and then here's his English name. Like, we're going to get to a guy, he's called Malachi nowadays.
Yeah.
That's not his name. That's not what any of his contemporaries call it. All right. So
if you're time traveling, you're looking for Malachi.
don't call him Malachi. So the big raids, or the raids start out smallish. A couple of ships. You usually had more than one. You did not like to take one ship to raid.
Right.
You want backup. So 2 or 3 ships to take care of each other. But not huge. Like if you have a big pile of ships, that's a big expedition. You better have a plan. You got to feed all these guys. They all need loot. They all need fame. This is a project.
Yeah.
So all of these raids always start out small, couple of ships,
A little test raid.
test raids. Well, now we've got a good feel for the area.
Okay.
So,
Time to bring a second ship.
in 1841, or not 1841, 841, sorry, 841,
1,000
years before that,
All right.
we get to a fella named Tergesius, which is that is a Romanized version of it. He's called Tergis or Torgest. Tergis is probably the best. So that's Geis, Tergis. This guy is very interesting. There is no record of a Tergis being of any import in all of Scandinavian record. But according to the annals, he shows up with 120 ships.
Oh, we got him from somewhere.
You can't do that if you're just Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
That is not possible.
Where would you even find one ship?
Exactly. You don't even. Yeah. This is a huge This is a massive. This is a full-scale invasion. This is.
So they have no records of it.
They have no records of this guy.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out who he is,
Yeah.
right? But Tergis apparently shows up. He's got no record of it. He's just known as being this raider, this conqueror, and that's what the Irish call him. Tergesius. A few other names.
Who? The guy with all the ships.
The guy with all the ships. We didn't know his name. He's not like he speaks Irish. He's not coming here going,
Yeah, he didn't show ID.
he doesn't show up and speak the language. He's on the floors, the kite and food. Cha! Mostly what Vikings speak is axe to face.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
the language they speak.
It's effective. Not really a conversation.
They
but-
did get good at learning other languages because they wanted to yell at you. But also it ties into that ask hostages and slaves questions.
Yeah.
Figure out what's going on.
Oh, okay.
And
Information.
information. So that every time I hear information makes me think of The Prisoner, the old 60s TV show.
Oh, yeah.
What do you want? Information. That was a big thing. And then you got chased by the big bouncy ball. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Oh,
Sounds great.
apparently I'm older than you. Anyway,
You can only consume so much media.
you can only that's a lie.
Oh.
But you can only remember so much of what
That's
you
true, I
consume.
guess.
I think that's fair. All right. So this Tergis guy might have been Ragnar Lothbrok.
Oh.
Mr. Fuzzy Britches himself shows up all over the place. But the reason why this is thought that it could be him is because they think that he sailed with his ships from England, not from Norway.
Okay.
And he was so powerful, but not a king, like not a written down landed nobility type king. They think that this is maybe part of his bigger raids throughout England and Ireland.
Okay.
So
You just happen to do a bunch of stuff.
He just happened to do a bunch of stuff.
I'm gonna stop by Ireland.
the tricky thing with Ragnar Lothbrok is he's a semi-mythical figure. We know his kids existed. We don't know much about him other
Okay.
than the legends behind him. One of his kids is going to feature into this too.
Okay.
Because
It's got to be in general hard though to
It's-
sort out what's true and not.
It is.
It's hard enough to do that now when you have a whole bunch of information.
we've got pictures, right? We
Yeah.
got pictures. We have videos of certain things happening, and we can still have different perspectives and understandings of it.
Yeah.
It's wild that nowadays you can have a picture of a thing going on and a video of a thing going on, and people still like, no, that didn't happen. Now go 1,000 years ago,
Yeah.
and nobody knows what happened except the people who were there. But they maybe embellish, maybe
Sure.
tell stories. And as we talked about, we've got our bards for the Irish, and we have our skalds for the Norse, and they are paid by kings to write really flattering stories, so you don't fully know what's going on. That's what is fascinating about a history. Is we take this version and that version and that version, we try to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm obviously not.
And the
I'm
truth-
not a doctor of history.
Oh
I'm
yes.
not
By the way, we are not professionals.
not professionals.
At
We're
all.
amateurs who like history
Yes.
and good stories. So this is not to
But
be
as
taken as
usual too, with
perfect.
almost all history, is that the truth is probably none of the things. It's probably somewhere
in there.
between.
So we
yes.
try to give as much information and
Yeah.
take it. If I wanted to just tell the story, I'd just say Ragnar Lothbrok showed up in Ireland with an axe and his fuzzy pants, and that was it.
The
and
mighty
he conquered
Ragnar?
it all. But he didn't.
All hail Ragnar.
All hail Ragnar. So this Tergis guy, though, and this is where it kind of splits, because Tergis is thought to have died in battle.
Okay. Oh. End of story.
Ragnar, historically and in all the stories, dies in Northumberland,
Oh.
I think. Northumbria. Aela, the king, captured him and threw him in a snake pit.
Oh.
to get killed by poisonous snakes. That's
Ooh.
how he was sick of this guy raiding. And then
Do you build a snake pit or you find a snake pit?
I feel like you find it and you expand on it.
Okay.
You feed the snakes.
Yeah, sure.
But they're snakes. They can get out of a pit, so they have to be like comfortable in
How?
there, right?
How?
They can slither, can't they?
Up?
Can't snakes slither up? So
Directly up? I guess it depends how steep the pit
I'm
is.
just thinking of it like a dirt hole. So yeah, no
guess.
problem. But they'd have to like smooth. Some poor guy's in there. I hope I don't fall in the pit with all. He's smoothing down the sides.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I
It's
don't know
not-
how you make, find, or maintain
Maybe
a
it's
snake
just
pit.
it could be a well filled with
Could be.
snakes, dried up, and they fill it with snakes.
Well, I'm
I
going
don't
to do
know.
some research on snake pits.
Dig it up. But apparently that's how King Aella killed Ragnar Lothbrok. But in this story, Turgis basically landed in Dublin, where modern-day Dublin is.
Yeah.
He fortified the area, and he established, he built what is called, let me make sure I get the name right. What is it? It's a thingmote. So the thing, this is a Viking term, thing.
Thing?
It's like a gathering. Just
Oh.
thing. Thing. It's a thing.
We have a little thing later.
Yep, we have a thing later. And
Yeah.
that's literally where that comes from. It's like,
Oh.
well, are you going to go to the thing?
Interesting.
And it was a meeting. It was a gathering.
Okay.
One of the most famous is the All Thing. That is the leaders and a huge amount of the Norse people gather in one spot at Uppsala, which is like the
Uppsala?
most sacred site in Norse.
It's called Uppsala?
Uppsala. Yeah.
Oops.
Uppsala. No. Uppsala. Uppsala. In Norway, which has a tragic history of having the coolest church ever, and some jerk Christian king burnt it to the ground because he's a jerk. But it was awesome. It was this cool, like, hand-built. I think it was what they call a stave church. So there weren't a lot of they didn't use lots of nails. It's
Yeah.
everything's joined together just by the
Oh.
weight of the wood.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could see it. It was built at the top of a mountain, and they had a lot of gold on it, so it shone. So people would go up this mountain to worship and honor the gods.
Shiny church up on a hill.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
And then they burnt it. Rather than turn it into a Christian church, they just killed this awesome.
Should have made it out of
Thousands.
stones.
There you go. There you
You
go.
did make it out of wood.
But
You
who
shouldn't
wants
have-
to haul stone up a mountain?
Just saying, if you don't want your church burned down, don't
Yep.
make it out of
Yeah.
wood.
It's a shame you put that flammable church there. It's a real shame if something bad happened to it. Plus, Vikings, they burn everything.
It's kind
Plus,
of our thing.
at some point, they were like, yeah, it's pretty cold up here. Maybe we'll burn the church, and then we'll make it through the winter. That's my horrible.
Good plan.
Will's watched too many cheesy Norse movies.
Thanks, Olaf.
It's Olaf, yeah. That's how we talk. It's real relaxed, and someone burned Uppsala. Did you see that?
Oops.
Because everyone in Norway saw it because it was on top of a mountain, and it's
Very
the only
shiny.
one we see, and it's
And
on
then
fire.
It's on fire.
Well, poop. Now we call it Poopsala because it's
Oh.
not cool anymore. It's not up there. It's everywhere else. It's on fire Sala. Sad.
Sad Sala.
Sad Sala. So the all thing would be held at Uppsala. So they have the thing moat. It's a hill. So moat. M-O-T-E. Moat. And that is a term just for mound.
Okay.
In England, they had the moat and Bailey style castles, which is a mound with a little ring of logs around it, basically to make a wall. And this thing was just they built it 40 feet high.
Is that where the word moat comes from?
Yes.
With water in it? Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, but the moat is the water carved into it
Yeah, okay.
afterwards.
I see.
So it's supposed to be a raised ground surrounded by water.
But some sort of barrier.
Yeah.
All right.
So they built this hill, and that was where you'd have the guy who's talking would stand on top of the hill
Oh,
and
that's
talk to his
nice.
people.
Yeah.
And then whoever's talking, go up, talk. It was easier to see. And
early
have
microphones.
You could have debates on it. Is very similar to what the Greeks did with amphitheaters, but in reverse.
Okay.
The Greeks were down, and you'd all look down on them. It's kind of everybody looks up to talk to the guy.
Okay. Yeah.
And you'd have all these different speakers. You'd have the law speaker who sometimes would say, this is the law, this is the rule, here's what's going on. They have conversations. And it was so the public could see what was going on. A lot of the times they built buildings on top of these eventually, and that's where the halls would be.
Oh.
But traditionally, old school Norse, you go on top of the hill to talk your case, and everybody watches, and then it's largely judged by the people, or it's judged by somebody in authority, and the people can see it happen, and that way you know it happened, rather than, well, we came into this decision behind closed doors, now go stab him. They wanted everything to be above board.
Yes, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah,
Right.
literally and figuratively. You want everybody to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you
Sounds
didn't
fair.
see it happen, it's your own darn fault for not walking to the thing to see what happened.
We did put it up on the top of the hill there for
Yep,
you.
we did have a meeting. Everybody could see it. All you had to do was poke your head out of the house.
I was busy farming and surviving.
We did it on a not farming day.
Oh, okay.
We had torches set up. We had all this stuff.
Sure.
We had a bell.
Yeah.
We said show up. We sent guys around. It's your own darn fault. So this could be also where business was discussed. Like usually arguments were sorted out, sort of thing, which is cool because it's very similar to how the Irish culture works, where there are rules and laws, but it's largely determined by individuals, not by a state coming in and whacking you with something. The king has authority over certain things, like going to war
Right.
and such, but if I do something to you, and you do something to me, it's handled like between us.
Yeah. Small claims court.
Small claims court, civil versus state.
Yeah.
Irish law is really similar at the time, where the king is like, I'm in charge of the big stuff, but I don't handle like murder trials.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
rules
who's
for
got
that.
time.
Yep, we have rules for that. Sort it out amongst yourselves. We literally have a rule for what happens if you kill him. We're like for like the Danes or the Norwegians, they have weregild. You killed my family member, you owe me money.
Oh.
Blood money. It's
Ooh.
literally where the term
Yeah.
blood money comes from.
Yeah.
Is you killed a family member, he is worth this much to me, you owe me this much in coin. There was usually like an established rate.
Oh man.
You know, like killing a slave to them.
Sure, yeah.
You owe the property value.
I mean, the one benefit is if you're getting blood money, if someone's getting blood money because of you, you're dead, so you don't know how much you. It was
Yeah.
Really? That much?
That's it. That's it. 50 pieces of silver. I thought that was worth 60. Come
At
on.
least. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the more important the person, the higher the weregild.
Yeah.
Like killing a farmer, that was a big no-no. There aren't a lot of farmers. So
we
you're
need
not
the
supposed
food.
to. A lot of the times, farmers didn't go raiding because they were too busy creating food.
Yeah.
So that was a hugely respected
Because
and
every day is farming day. Well, every day is farming
every day's
day.
farming day. Basically, they're the only people with a constant income.
Yeah.
Like they're constantly making money. Whereas the raiders, like, well, once or twice a year, I go over and I kill some English people. I maybe bring back some money,
There you go.
whatever I could carry, and then I have to make it last till the next raiding season.
Mm-hmm.
Lean times means we don't raid. Oh, I got my leg chopped off in
Oh,
the last
boy.
one. Can't raid
Jeez.
anymore.
The farmer's like, "Would you like to eat every day?"
Yep. So you don't mess with the farmers. All right. So we've got this fort start to be set up. Turgis goes off, dies in battle.
Oh, Turgis.
Well, he's a warrior. You want to die in battle.
Oh wait, who died in the pit?
Oh, that was Ragnar Lothbrok.
Oh.
Apparently,
But it
this
might
is where
be-
if
okay.
they're the
I
same
see,
guy.
yeah.
We're not sure whose story is more accurate.
He
But
died in battle with snakes in a pit.
the snakes in Ireland.
That's true.
All the snakes. For all they know, though, he was the war leader under Ragnar,
Yeah.
and he got killed.
Okay.
But he was killed by this guy Niall Caille, Niall, and then Caille. He killed Turgis and ended the threat because what was going on is they landed in Dublin, they made like a fort,
Yep.
and they started basically invading everywhere.
Now that we have a fort,
We have a fort, we can act out of there, and we can crush
We can
everybody.
fight and go back home.
Yeah, we have a base.
Yeah.
And we never have to leave.
Yeah.
So Turgis dies, and that kind of breaks some of the invading.
Sure. It's
Some
gonna
of
slow
it?
them down. Yeah.
But there's still a lot of Vikings. Fortunately for Ireland, the Vikings start to split into two factions. They're the Dubhail and the Finhail. The Dubhail and the Finhail. So the Dubhail are the dark foreigners, and the Finhail are the fair foreigners.
Oh.
I'm not sure if this is where the Black Irish thing comes from.
Okay.
It mostly means the Dubhail are the Danes, so they have darker hair, and the Finhail are the blondes,
Oh, okay.
the
Yeah.
Norse.
Right.
Because mostly Norwegians are very fair-haired,
Yeah.
really light skin, and the Danes have darker hair typically. So that causes factional warfare, and finally, a fella comes along named King Amlaib. Amlaib, that's the Irish one. It's Olaf in Norse.
Okay.
King Olaf shows up, and he's like, "Enough of this crap. I've had it." He storms in, and basically beats the crap out of both factions until everybody listens to him. It's like, I'm sick of all this infighting.
Yeah.
We were a united front. Now we're all divided. And if Ireland got together, they'd just crush us. So this is stupid. We can make our own little kingdom here and fit in and be part of this. Or we can keep killing each other and do nothing.
When I was a kid, me and my brothers would sit in the back seat, and if we were getting all crazy back there, my dad would just kind of randomly go back and just kind of slap at all of us. I was the middle kid, so I remember.
You got the worst. You got it coming and going.
But and not even involved in the fight.
But
just same method of just everyone.
Yep, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does, and he establishes control of the region. Once he's established control, and he fights some of the Irish a little bit,
just for fun.
That's always happening.
But also
that's it is.
Sure.
But it's the nature of the beast of there's constant border skirmishes.
Sure.
The Irish are like, who are these guys? And they're like, we're the Vikings. And they just beat the crud out of each other. It fits really well because they're both warrior cultures.
Ooh.
It's very different than England, where England is largely a farming culture. The Irish are like big believers in songs and glory and poetry and this big spectacle and you're doing it for the gods, and even the Christian ones are like, yeah, this is righteous and fighting's still okay.
Righteous.
So it's two cultures who are basically built around the warband concept of you get a party of tough warriors together and you go beat the snot out of other tough warriors, and that's a good day.
Well, sounds like their calendar is full.
They might have actually found Valhalla on Earth because it's just constant.
Yay.
It's constant. Just you go beat the crud out of each other, you go back to the mead hall. And the Irish had a similar thing. They had a similar gathering hall where their warriors would go. And they're like, let's go fight somebody. Let's go fight we're going to go kill somebody. And they go charge and kill each other. It worked really well for their culture.
Sure.
So this is a perfect storm of similar cultures just beating the snot out of each other. And each king having his personal poet say, you were right and the other guy sucked. You were right, the other guy sucked. Which fortunately, though, gives us tons of written and, what's the word? Oral history about the era, because you have so many stories coming out, and then we have to pick out the bits that are most likely and most true. So King Amlai goes back to England because he's got land over there, does some fighting, and he comes back with his brother. Two of his brothers. One of his brothers is Aymar, and the other one is, I cannot pronounce this, but the Norse pronunciation is just Asl. A-S-L. Asl. Actually, most Norse spellings have an R at the end, so it's Asler. Asler. The Irish spelling is A-U-I-S-L-E. Ausle. I think it's actually pronounced probably Wheela. Because that U-I is E. So it'd be Aila. Could be Ayla. Aymar's Viking pronunciation is Ivar. The most famous Viking that is known is Ivar the Boneless, who led the great heathen army that conquered England. We've talked a little bit about him.
Yeah.
They're not sure why they called him the Boneless. There's a few reasons. They think that he was so tough that then they hit him, it was like you weren't striking bone. There was no way to cripple his injuries.
Yeah.
One was that he couldn't walk. He's paralyzed.
Okay.
Very hard to be a warrior if you can't walk.
Sure.
That's the most commonly used one. Like there's the Vikings TV series that Ivar has, his legs don't work and he's just kind of stumps around on crutches and kills people that way. Another one is boneless, meaning it was an insult. Maybe he couldn't get it up.
I feel like he wouldn't be behind that nickname, but
he might have thought, and also could be the irony, because there's also is thought that he was a very prolific breeder and had a lot of kids. So he probably disproved that.
Boneful.
Boneful. The bone is just Ivar the Bone. So there's a lot of reasons why they might have called him that. Nobody really knows for sure. However, it is thought that this Ivar who came over is the same Ivar, because he proves himself to be an extremely capable warrior, and the entire dynasty built around this family is the Aymar, or the E-Aymar. So it's the U-I, just like the Enil. This is the E-Aymar. The E-Aymar. The E-Aymar. It's hard to pronounce.
Yes, it is.
Bloody Irish. So they build a dynasty around this guy and his brother. Ivar is so powerful and so well respected, he becomes co-ruler under this king, under his King Olaf. He's equal. He's just liked and respected that much. So with the presence of Ivar even if it's not the boneless, this guy apparently shifts the balance a little bit so that everybody's like, all right, yep, we're going to go fight Ireland again. We got this. And they build a dynasty as a result. So they become like a legitimate kingdom. Dublin becomes its own legitimate little Viking kingdom.
Nice.
The Irish have to pay it respect. They have to understand it. They help certain Irish factions fight against other Irish factions. There's allies. There's cross-pollination. And this becomes very important. Pollination. And this also ties into the strong Irish woman doing what she wants when she wants. If she doesn't appreciate a guy, she's going to find herself a new one who treats her right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You go,
here comes,
lassie.
somewhere down the line, a fellow named Mael Secnail. Mac Domnine. So Mael Secnail, this is Malachi. They have a statue of him and it says Malachi. That's not his name. It's Mael Secnail. Mael space Sechnaill. He's from the Enil family. So he is the High King.
I am the High King now.
It used to be that you voted. The kings would vote.
Yeah.
But the Enils are so powerful, it just bounces between northern and southern Enil every other generation. So his father, Mac Domnaill, Mac means like son of, child of, next in line to. So Domnaill was his dad. Nowadays it's just Domnall. That's a common Irish name, Domnall.
Okay.
He becomes the king of Meath, is what it's pronounced as nowadays. It's spelled M-I-D-E, but it's M-E-A-T-H in English. Meath. He's the king of Meath. Meath is the land immediately around Dublin.
All right.
He sees the Vikings as a bit of a pest.
Oh, no.
They're in his land.
Time for you to get out.
They are not doing what they're supposed to do.
We don't like your
They are raiders,
kind.
but also Dublin's becoming a bit of a trade hub. So
Yeah, right
there's
on.
a reason why he could probably want this.
Sure, yeah.
It's wealthy. This town has gone from maybe nothing, maybe a tiny little ecclesiastic settlement, to there are probably thousands of people living in this town
Oh,
in just the span of like a century.
yeah.
So it's growing fast, and it's mostly not farming. It's almost exclusively trading, and they've got people coming from Spain, which means also from North Africa, which also means from Arabia. So they've got people coming from all over the place.
Yeah.
Because the waterways lead there, and Vikings are known as very good tradesmen.
Sure. They got
So
boats.
they got boats. They're really good at getting all over the place. They are
Yeah.
Vikings in Constantinople. There were Vikings that made it as far as Saudi Arabia because they just take the waterways that they
Yeah.
could find. So they've got all this trade coming in. It's a very wealthy little settlement that's growing up. They've fortified it. It's got a wall.
And this is around when? Wait, we're nine. Are we
This is in the
90s?
940s is when we're
Right.
starting to come into Dublin. Hold on. So in 949 is when Mael Secnail is born. And
Hey.
he's the High King. He's not born High King, but he becomes High King. He
Oh,
becomes
High
High King in 979, 980.
Okay.
Well, now he wants to get rid of the Viking problem.
Now that I'm High King.
I'm High King. This needs to go away.
Yep.
He comes into conflict with the latest King Olaf. Olaf Cuaran. This is probably Ivar's great-grandson.
Okay.
So he's come from a line of tough warrior guys. This dude
So it's been a bunch of Olafs and a bunch of Malaks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, yeah, it's funny because Olaf is like the great-grandson or the great-grandnephew of the first King Olaf. And Mael Secnail is the great-grandson of the first Mael Secnail.
Why are we fighting?
Why can't we all just get along? It gets
Something my great-great-grandfather did
It
to your
gets
great-grandfather.
crazier.
All right.
It gets crazier. Okay, so Olaf is amazing. I just love this guy. He's probably Ivar's great-grandson. He was the king in York in England.
Okay.
York is one of the biggest Viking settlements in history. It was originally called Jorvik. And that was where the Vikings landed. They fortified it. It was almost impossible to crack. Even when the English were they were taking their land back, it was almost impossible to take it. Till he got ousted in York. Ran away to Ireland, which he also owns. then went back to York, reconquered it,
Oh.
then went back to, like, this guy's all over the place in the span of a few years, fighting everywhere, and he's always got like a gaggle of poets and writers with him, and he paid them to go out and tell stories about how great he was.
Win the PR war.
He did, which is a really cool crossover between the Skald and the Bard. I just think that that's fascinating. Is
Sure.
all the kings, totally different cultures, separated by a huge swath of water and no cultural crossover at all. Suddenly it's like, oh, so you've got poets. Yeah, we've got poets. Do they fight? Yeah, of course they fight. Ours too. That's amazing. Let's kill each other. Instead of being friends, let's kill each other. And then they kill each other. And then we'll have the poets tell each other about it, unless
Sure.
they die in the fighting too, because they like to fight. Because Skalds were like battlefield poets.
Really?
Those are the guys who'd like march in singing like the war songs. And the Irish poets would do the same darn thing.
Huh.
And this like kind of creates like the concept of like the Scots had the bagpiper who go into battle playing the
Yeah.
pipes. These guys all had like their poets. Your job as a poet, because everybody thinks poets sit there and they write
Oh.
and they don't do anything. They're fighting. That's their job.
If only they would just,
You can't tell the story if you weren't there.
only if they'd fight just with words.
Just with words. They would actually. The Vikings actually did have rap
A
battles.
little rap battle.
They did.
Yeah.
They would have. I forget what they're called, but it was like a rhyme off.
Sure.
And who could tell the better flighting? That was
Oh,
what it's called,
flighting,
flighting, which is very close to fighting.
Sure.
And it was who could have the best, and it was Flyting. This is how we would spell it. And it was, who could do the best diss track publicly, but it wasn't. It couldn't just be like you're dumb. It had to
Right.
be like poetic and rhyme and fit this whole thing, and it's great.
Sure.
I think that's
A
hilarious.
good diss track is.
They did also just kill each other with swords.
Well, there's that, too.
They'd have a holmgang. That was the most common thing. Was a holmgang. They would. It means like little island. You're supposed to go to a small island and only one of you comes back.
Okay.
That's hardcore. Otherwise, they just make a ring around it, and or a squared off area, and you just fight until one of you was dead or surrendered and said, "Okay, fine, you were right."
All right.
But usually it was a blood thing. I think the Irish probably, I feel like with how similar they are, the Irish had the same. But it's not really a square, it's more of a squiggly, circly thing. Because that's what we like. Is a more
Same
circle.
idea though.
It's the same thing.
2 men
though.
enter, 1 man leave. We
You
call
go
it
up on
Thunder.
a hill. We call it the Hill Gang.
We
And you
call
go-
ours Thunderdome.
Thunderdome. Yep. We got a little guy riding on a big guy, and he watches everything, and then he crushes your skull if you fail.
All right.
All right, we're running out of time. So, Olaf is fighting everybody. He invades Leinster, which Leinster is south of them.
Okay.
And he captures the king, whose name is Domhnall the Squinting.
Dumb now squinting.
The Squinting. He's just, what's that going on over there? Are those Vikings coming this way? Yeah, yes, Your Highness, they've been coming this way. It doesn't look like a Viking to me.
No.
Just squints
Poor-
at him.
Poor Domino needs
He
glasses.
gets captured and taken as a hostage.
Of course he does.
And they keep him there. I think this is you don't keep a king hostage. I mean, the Vikings do all the time. But I think this is
Bad
one
form.
of the big pushes for Mael to show up. And he's like, no. You're taking kings hostage. You've got slaves. We don't do slaves in Ireland. We don't like it.
Yeah.
Although they were happy to buy slaves. But they didn't take slaves. They were the whole distinction thing.
Yeah.
But the Vikings were fine. The Vikings ran a very lucrative slave trade. They were very good at it. So he brings an army, calls in his buddies. Olaf is very popular across all over the place. So he gets some Viking guys. He's got friends from Scotland who show up. And they meet at the Battle of Tara. Now, Tara, that's where we're going to put it.
Oh. Okay.
Tara.
Tara.
That's Tara. It's the seat of power. It is this giant stone plinth sticking out of a hill. And apparently the legend was if the king of Ireland put his foot like on the stone, like against it,
Yeah.
this mountain would shout his name and tell everybody this is the High King. That's the
Oh.
tradition of it.
Sure.
Probably what it actually comes from is they'd have a big gathering there and they would shout, this is Hail King so-and-so, kind of a thing. But this is the traditional seat of power where you go to talk about all the things. And they have a battle right next to this huge hill with this giant stone sticking out of it. No one knows how the stone got there. I don't
Oh,
think.
okay.
It's,
Is it a natural formation?
It's a natural stone.
Okay.
But it's huge. It's this giant plinth of just rough rock. So if people put it there, it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
But what might have happened is they found it and they're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, look at that big stone.
That's where our king gets named king. It's the tallest point of rock.
I can remember this spot.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So this is in 980. It is Meath versus Dublin in what at the time is a big battle. So you asked how big are the battles?
Yeah.
The Vikings have 2,000. It's not really known how many the Irish have. Probably about the same size.
Okay.
Maybe a little more because he's the High King. He can pull a little more. But the Vikings, like I said, they can pull people from all over the place. It is a really one-sided fight, though. Like, really one-sided. The Irish win. They kill, like, almost the whole Viking group. Olaf lives,
Good job, Olaf.
but he is shamed.
Yeah.
He's been crushed, and he can't go back to York because he's, he's lost status from this. So he retires. The theory is he became a monk, so he was a Christian.
Okay.
He's just like, all right,
Guess I'll
well,
do that.
Olaf knows when Olaf's lost.
Poor
I guess I'll
Olaf.
go. So, this is the crazy bit. So Mael picks a guy. This is not the guy's name, but I want to get his Sechnael. Mael Sechnael picks a successor. He picks a Viking, and his name is Gluniern, which is the Viking name is Jarnkni. It means iron knee,
Ooh.
which either like if he hits you with his knee, you're unconscious, or
Yeah.
it's a symbol of like toughness or endurance kind of a thing.
Sure. Something strong.
This is Olaf's son,
Yeah.
the previous king. He's also Mael's brother.
Oh.
Olaf married Mael Sechnael's mother. She apparently got tired of Domhnall, her husband, and moved to Dublin and married the Viking king and had a bunch of kids with him. So Mael Sechnael has like a bunch of brothers in his kingdom, and then a bunch of half brothers and half sisters in Dublin. So it's like branches of the family just fought each other.
Sounds like she did most of the manipulating of the.
She might have. She might have. This could be very much like the Tane, where she went back. You know, this guy sucks. Yeah, and it could have been too. Like, my mother's with these people now. I don't really like it. I'm gonna go stab this guy. You're not my dad.
You're not my real dad.
It's just a fight with his stepdad. Like, you're not my father. Ha!
Yikes.
But he doesn't kill Olaf, and in fact, he picks this guy Gluniern to be his, ruler of Dublin.
Okay.
They fought on different sides.
Yeah.
He's identified as Olaf's son, which means he fought for Olaf, not
What?
he fought with his brother.
What did we fight this for? We're
And
just gonna give it
they
back to him?
basically we've changed the position of power. Males frees all the slaves, and especially Domhnall the Squinty. Just Domhnall the Squinting.
He didn't even notice.
Squinty D. He frees Squinty D. Am I outside now?
Right there.
What? Good thing I'm already squinted. So he frees him, which is probably a big thing. It's like, freed this king. So they, now Leinster, they're like, yeah, you freed our king, cool. And Gluniern becomes like fully devoted to his brother. Like 110%, he is on this guy's side. They go to war together. They fight basically everybody. They put down all these rebellions. He's extremely well respected by the Irish, but obviously there's going to be some factional problems. 8 years later, in 988, he's murdered. One chronicler said he got drunk and his slave murdered him.
Okay.
But Mael got furious at the suggestion and told all the chroniclers, that's bull. Don't say that about my brother. This is a factional thing. And Mael apparently took this all very, very, very personally. He gets a massive army for the time, so thousands of guys together, and goes to Dublin, demanding weregild for his brother's death.
Oh.
Which you don't do unless you're mad.
Yeah.
And for him to do a Viking thing, this is a hardcore, pure Irishman, goes in and says, I want compensation for my brother's death. This is so he's showing respect to their traditions and also his.
Sounds like the cultures are meeting together.
They're meeting
anyway.
together. The Vikings basically give him the finger. It's a 20-day siege, and when he's done, he cleans house. he not only like kills the guys responsible, he kills like anybody who could potentially be a threat, and he stomps down so hard that he says, from now on, you will abide by Irish law, Brehon law. You no longer get your own little set of rules.
We gave you a chance.
We gave you a chance. Because when he picked his brother to be in charge, he let them rule like Vikings rule.
Sure.
He still it was fine.
So
But
I thought it'd be fine.
he's
leave
like,
my
I
brother
gave
judge.
you an inch, you took and took and took, and then you murdered my brother, who was my friend. So he's furious, he does a complete change of power, and he makes them basically bend the knee and take to Brehon law. It's not really sure who takes over. There's different arguments. It was either Sigtrig Silkbeard, who was another half-brother.
Yes.
He's Glunjarn's half-bro.
Okay.
So dad had another wife and another.
Yeah.
Or it was Ivar of Waterford. He's a totally different guy.
Okay.
Different Ivar. No one's really sure who took over after, but one of those two did, and eventually Sigtrig becomes kind of the big name in the area. But this is considered the founding day of when Ireland fully took over Dublin. And from then on, the Vikings don't have any power. What's really cool is that there aren't a lot of like Viking cultural norms. Basically, they just all became Irish. Like the ones that didn't leave, they just kind of became Irish.
Well, you live somewhere long enough, I guess.
No, it's really weird because throughout Ireland's history, they've been conquered many times, but Ireland always goes back to being Irish. In the 12th century, the Normans show up. They're French, but also the Normans are also Vikings again, so it's kind of funny. It's like an extended Viking invasion. They show up, and they're English, and they're French, and they're Viking, and they invade, and they become Irish. The English tried it, and they became Irish, and today Ireland is Irish, like except for the northern part. That's a whole argument.
Get yourself a good culture.
It's
gonna
wild.
Stick.
Like they just eventually like, hey, I guess we're Irish
we
now.
are,
All right,
okay.
let's go have a pint. Let's headbutt each other and let's drink and have fun. So that is when it is considered the official founding of it. So in 1988, that this huge 1,000 years of being a city party.
Oh, nice.
But it was when they so they started in 841 is when the nominal settling of the area is, but not until 988 when the Irish finally came in and like, nope, you're all Irish now.
Now,
And the Brehon law is again, it's very. This law is kind of a traditional Irish law, traditional Irish rules. It's the, if you do this or you do that, then you owe this guy money. It's a civil thing, not a state level thing. The kings don't run it. It's supposed to be how you sort out your problems locally. And it is similar enough to Viking law that the Vikings are like, oh yeah, that's fine, we'll do it. And now Dublin eventually becomes the seat of power because everybody's like, this is a really good trade spot.
yeah, it's good. We like Dublin here. It's nice.
And then after that, Irish history gets wild again. But for a time, it's solidified. Then you get Brian Boru, who's this great high king. He comes in and he just hammers down on everybody, and it's like
That
really solidifies
sounds
Ireland. It's a whole new thing.
Like another
It's a whole new
story
thing.
for another
so
day.
that is the that's
Well
how we
done.
got there. I went over. I know.
As
Look how
usual,
much
Will
time-
went over. No, this is how much he went over.
We're keeping records now.
That's right. So, well done, Will. Thank you on the founding of Dublin.
It's the founding of Dublin.
You've written down there's sources. Do you want to say what the sources
So
is?
I found three big sources of the annals. There's the Annals of Ulster, which started in like I want to say like 48.
Okay.
But then they were all compiled in the 15th century, and then were added more later and later. There's the Annals of the Four Masters, and there's the Annals of Tigernach, T-I-G. It's like tiger, and then N-A-C-H. T-I-G-E-R-N-A-C-H. Tigernach. And yeah, so those are the traditional. It's neat because they come from different sources. But then you also have the Eddas from like the Vikings that have their versions of it, and then there's some mentions of it in the the English chronicles. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle mentions some of this stuff. But
All
it's
of
cool.
which you can research and check out for yourself.
All that you can.
Or if you do have knowledge about it and you want to tell us about it, feel free to leave it.
Tell me what I got wrong. If I got any pronunciations wrong, send a pronunciation guide. Those are cool.
Sure.
Because I like to get that right.
we do our best.
our best,
So
it's hard.
that is the founding of Dublin. We'll be back next week with something about Stirling Castle.
Stirling Castle,
We'll have to
24th of
find
July,
about that.
1304.
I don't know what that is.
Don't look it up. You'll spoil a really, really good story.
So I'm excited to find out.
It's a pretty good story.
So like and subscribe, obviously. Also, you can check out I got the Patreon down there if you want to help
Oh, yeah.
support this
Yep.
this venture that
Help
we're
us
doing.
buy coffee.
And yeah, buy
It's
some
really all it's about, man. Coffee and bits of bread.
Thanks for joining us, Will.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
You too, Mike. Bye, guys.
Bye.